To be fair, I always wanted to be a game developer or game designer. Creating 3D experience in the web, 3GS updates so often that it's really complicated to keep up with it. I fell in love with the concept of using declarative components to create the scenes and say, I want this for view. Like,
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Coffee with Developers. Today with Alvaro Saburido. He is DevRel Engineer at Storyblok and the creator of Tressjs. Welcome, Alvaro.
thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. I'm pretty excited to talk about my new role in the Storyblok and some things about Tressjs.
Yes, cool. So first, tell us then about your newly appointed DevRel Engineer at Storyblok. What do you do as a DevRel Engineer there? How is your daily work?
So it has been a really interesting month because it's the first time I'm being a DevRel. So I'm in the solutions team. The DevRel is very big, and we try to cover several stuff, but I'm more focused on demos with clients. So a client can come and say, hey, I would like to see if we can use the Storyblok, and I show them the product itself, the features, and how they can solve their problems, basically. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's DevRel work in an is it open source Storyblok?
So the core itself is not open source, but I'm working currently in the SDK. So Storyblok has wide options in SDKs that are all open source. So all the technologies like Vue, React, Svelte, Astro, you have those libraries that you can also contribute. A part of doing the demos, I'm also supporting the SDKs. So currently I'm working with Alba Silvente on the Nox and Vue SDKs.
Oh, nice. That's certainly interesting. But talking about open source, Alvaro, you are the creator of an open source library called TresJS. Can you tell us a little bit what is TresJS doing and how can people use it?
Yes, it's probably the biggest or the one that has more hype that I have worked on. It's not my first library, but it is the one that I'm more excited of. So TresJS is basically it's a way of creating 3D experience in the web using 3GS as view components. So you can create the scenes declaratively by using components. So let's say you have a canvas. To introduce a little bit the audience to what a 3D scene is. It's just basically a canvas element, a DOM element, that you code the scene with the objects that you want to have inside and a camera, the lights, etc. And then you render it into that canvas element, okay? So in TresJS, you can use components like view components to say Tres canvas, and then inside a Tres perspective camera, then a Tres scene, and inside the scene a Tres mesh with a box with this material and those kind of things. So instead of doing everything in JavaScript with plain 3GS, you can do it as view components, and you can reuse them, which is something that is awesome. You can create a component, call it, I don't know, shoe, and then you can reuse it in several places.
Oh, nice. That sounds very challenging, mostly because I don't know anything about 3D. How did you get into 3D, by the way?
So 3D started like 1.5 or 2 years ago because, to be fair, I always wanted to be a game developer or game designer, right? But life drove me into telecommunications engineer, so I abandoned that dream for a while. Then I became passionate about front-end development because it was my way of mixing creativity with coding. And eventually I saw this TresJS library, which is like a wrapper on top of WebGL to create stuff in 3D, and say, oh, well, someday I will try. But I always thought that it was for people that is really intelligent and really like gifted, right? And then I try a Bruno Simon course. It's an amazing course that is called 3GS Journey. And I started learning and I just thought that it's not that difficult, actually. The 3GS does a lot of work for you. And I started creating the scenes and then become more interested on actually creating objects or modeling characters and so on. So I learned
Nice.
Blender and I mix them together. So nowadays I export my models and everything from Blender, and I put them on 3GS and create this like crazy scenes and so on.
Wow, that's a super interesting way to like sort of go back to the passion you had there and like use it in web in your new passion. So you can combine those things. That's always nice.
What
And
happened in the Vue community though is that in that time I was looking for something to do it in Vue, right? Because
yeah.
I'm mostly using Vue. I use React sometimes, but mostly I code in Vue. And I found a library called TresJs, which was basically a wrapper around 3GS, but 3GS updates so often that it's really complicated to keep up with it. So I guess that's why it was like really hype in the moment, and then it became unmaintained. Then I saw like one for React that is called React 3 Fiber, which is basically the same concept, but using a custom render API from React and a reconciliation layer. So I started using that for creating 3D scene, and I fell in love with the concept of using declarative components to create the scenes and say, I want this for Vue. Like, we need to have this in the Vue community. I started investigating, and there was a library called Launchbox.js, which is using a custom render. But the problem was that you needed to create two different Vue instances to make it work, because there was a reconciliation layer on Vue.js, something that the community is working on. So you needed to create two different apps and mix them together to make it work.
I see.
I didn't really like that, so that's why I thought in December last year, like, I'm gonna try something without a custom render, like using the vnodes directly. And the most important thing is that getting a catalog of objects from the Tress instance. So I import the latest three instance, and then I generate all the components based on that instance. So there is like 0 to none maintenance every time there is a new release, for example.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so you just you read that out from the library 3JS, and then you just generate the components and you're good to go. So that's pretty neat. And how long have you been working on this? Because I've seen the project grow and grow. I think you're at version 1.7 or 1.8 already.
Yes, correct. So we have at the moment two packages, the core one, which is called like Tress, and that's it. And that was created last December. So I have like a month of vacation because I accumulated too much extra days in my past company. So I start doing a POC, which was the version 0 in my own account. And then I figured out that it was actually working. And that if you wanted to create a scene or like a camera, you can use the same name with the prefix tres, and it was working. So when the POCs ended, I started like sharing it on Twitter, and a lot of people start being interested on the project and wanted to contribute. So that's when I freak out a little bit, because I'm not used to create open source library like, for example, Postwa or like others in the community. So I actually asked Patak from Vid if he can give me some advice, and he did give me a lot of good advices on how to get people into contributing to the project. So we start right now. We have a closed repository. It's not open source yet. It's gonna be. Because we are trying to polish it to a way that everyone can contribute to it and can code, because it's not necessarily easy to code 3GS and Vue related code, like really a specific code. But I'm happy because we have a lot of contributors right now, and they are creating a lot of cool stuff that we are going to release soon. So that has been like really, really, really cool to have a community around.
Wow, I have a few follow-up questions about what you just said. One is you said you asked Patak for some advice. What are, for example, some hints he gave you that worked out well for you?
So I was wondering at the beginning, like how to get people interested in something that I'm passionate right now, right? So I got into this project because I'm passionate about 3D and creating an open source project and so on. So my difficulty was how to transmit it, right? And he told me like, if you have a great approach or like a great product or open source project, right? People will get interested, but you need to show it off. You need to show it everywhere, right? So, like experiments, things that you're doing, and that will start conversations with people and start getting people like interested on the project, because you need to show the value that you're adding to the community, right? And then one advice was don't make it public yet, because that will give a little bit of like mystery to it, right? And that will work really well, because ensures that we don't public something that will break. In that
Yeah.
time, it was not as stable, and then that the people that get inside are getting like a small family kind of thing. So we created a Discord with the people that wanted to contribute, and we start talking there, and everything grow organically. So we are preparing now to open to everyone so they can contribute and help us in the project. And that was a really good advice, that maintain it closely for a while to avoid having a bunch of issues, a bunch of noise,
Yeah.
and actually made it stable enough so then people can enjoy it and use it.
Nice. That's what they also did with V Test, right? They had it closed at the beginning, and then I think they gave access to sponsors, and I think now it's completely open source.
Okay,
Which
I
is
missed
pretty.
the part of the sponsors, but at that time I was thinking like, who would like to sponsor this? And now I'm realizing that I got some contact about actually sponsoring to use it in real products, and that's when I freak out a little bit. It's like, okay, this is getting big.
But that's amazing. You create something and you find out like, oh, I'm not the only one that likes this. But that's usually the thing, right? So whatever you create, you create it first and foremost for yourself. But
Mhm.
you're not you can't be the only person that likes what you do. So like we are not all that different. Like there has to be other people that like it. You just have to find them, right? And you're growing I saw your social media presence, which certainly helps with this, which is great.
Yeah, no, Twitter has helped me a lot for that, and also like Mastodon, I share there as well. It's difficult to share in between the both of them, like doing cross posting. But I got a lot of people interested, and also in Vue.js Amsterdam, I was surprised that people not only recognize me from my Storyblok relation and my content, but actually like, you are the 3GS author. And I was like, okay, how this did happen? So it's impressive how things can grow, and I'm really happy that people are really like eager to help. And eager to contribute. Like right now, there are people contributing in the documentations to translate it to several languages, which is like awesome. Um, for a Nox module that we're drafting, so the idea will be to have
Nice.
like a Nox module for it, and a lot of abstractions in Cientos, because I mentioned in the beginning there was one package, right? But my idea was that there was a second package called Cientos. It's a bad joke. It's Tressjs is like 300. And the idea is that it expands the core. So you can do a lot of cool stuff from the core. abstractions for, I don't know, orbit cameras or cumulative shadows, all the fancy stuff that you see in real 3GS products. And we can do it there. And that's the community part. Like everyone could create their own abstraction or package to join it here, post-processing packages, so on. So we work a lot to have this API or like this core API that can be extended. That was one of the most difficult parts, but the people is contributing a lot in the Cientos package right now.
Oh, nice. I'm certainly happy for you that this is going so well, and also impressed, I must say, Alvaro. And I agree with the community that everyone is likes to help, especially the developer community. Vue community is so open and so friendly. Uh, it's sometimes really nice to see that the community gets together and helps with the projects.
That was one of the things that made me fell in love with open source, because I started in open source like creating small fixes and mostly documentation. So for people that that ask me like, how can I start in open source? I think it's a really good way to start, like small, because it's overwhelming the knowledge that you need to get in order to understand code source, especially if it's not your code source, right?
Yeah.
So instead of overwhelming, I try to start small and start with documentation maybe. So I helped in documentation for Knox, the previous version in Spanish. That's where I met Devi and Alba. And then you start doing more things and more things, contributing to projects that you like and that you find a bug and you know how to solve it, you can help them, right? And that became like super interesting to me, being able to help others in their projects. And then I met the Vue community, and the Vue community was so cool, and well, is so cool and so welcoming. And I met people like Daniel Roy from Nux that actually sit down and help me out with some project on my own, and I say like, people doesn't do this kind of thing, but they do in the Vue community. And I wanted to get that back to the community as well, be that kind of person. So it's awesome how you post something in Twitter and then everyone is eager to help you.
That's certainly amazing, Alvaro. Can you tell us now about some lessons that you learned while developing TresJS?
Oh, a lot of lessons. Like I learned so much in this project that I can tell you 2 years working on a company before. So for me, one of the most important things is try to figure out and practice in a solo environment and solo repo how to do a proper CI/CD in terms of release management. Right now, I'm doing all the release management manually because I can't figure out a way of automating a monorepo with several packages. So I have been asking like Anfu and a lot of people from the open source community, which is the best way of doing it. I still struggle with it. So it's really important that you get to know Git way better before you start, and also how to create releases and create release notes, change logs, giving information on how the project has been evolving. I actually needed to create a repo again because it was completely destroyed. Like I destroyed the way it was working. So I really recommend people that when you're starting, try to do some small repositories as a test and test the CI/CD, test everything there, the release management, and then start your project and not testing it in the project itself because it can get really bad. Another lesson learned: don't be shy to ask, or like, because a lot of people will try to not to ask in Twitter, for example, or other people that have the experience because they are shy or they are like they're gonna think that I'm not a good maintainer, and that's totally not true. Because everyone went from that, and there is not that much documentation out there on how to create a module or how to create a library, so don't be shy of asking people that know, and they're probably be more than happy to help you.
Okay, that's awesome advice. Thank you, Alvaro. And what can you advise someone that maybe doesn't want to create their own library yet, but first steps to get into open source?
What worked for me to start in open source was to start small and because it's really overwhelming when you get into a project that is not your source code, that you don't understand anything. So how can I help there if I don't understand, right? So I started doing small fixes or even documentation, helping with the documentation. And then I learned more about the projects and how to solve certain things. So I started to get more involved in several projects that I was interested on. And it's important for the authors of library because we mostly doing this in our free time. So any help that you can provide them is well accepted, believe me. So don't hesitate to help author of a library that you like, because it's gonna be awesome for both, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. Well, this entire topic of open source library creation, TresJS, is awesome, and we would certainly like to hear about this at our World Congress, Alvaro, in July. Do you think you can make it there and people can come and see you live?
I actually apply this same to do the 3GS talk. So is there?
Yes, so I think there's a very high possibility because I think it's a project that people or talk that people can really take a lot away from. And yeah, so I suppose, Alvaro, I see you in Berlin in July. And to all the listeners and viewers of this, thanks for tuning in. And Alvaro, see you around. Thank you.
See you. Thanks for having me, and ciao ciao.